Imagine yourself in the heart of ancient Rome. The wind blows golden dust over the stone roads. The scent of incense fills the air of the temples, and among citizens dressed in togas, a young man walks with determined steps. His name? Julius Caesar. But something is about to change his destiny forever. On a simple trip to Hispania, he comes across an imposing statue. The marble-carved gaze seems to transcend time. Alexander the Great, the greatest conqueror in history. And then, something unexpected happens. Caesar feels a tightness in his chest. His eyes fill with tears, and he cries. But why? What did he see in that statue that shook him so deeply? Was it a moment of weakness or a call to greatness? Today you will discover how this encounter became the turning point in Caesar's life and led him to transform Rome forever. And I guarantee you, the story behind these tears will astonish you. But before we dive headfirst into this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos packed with historical curiosities about ancient Rome and the ancient world. Have you ever wondered what it was like to live amid the grandeur of Rome, where imposing monuments and wide roads stretched beyond what the eye could see? Then, get ready. In the first segment, we unravel the environment that shaped Julius Caesar's character and led him to Hispania, where this transformative encounter would take place. The setting of Rome and Hispania. The Roman Republic, at the time when Julius Caesar was emerging on the political scene, was in constant expansion. Rome prided itself on its wide roads, the famous Roman roads, and its aqueducts, which symbolized the progress of a civilization ahead of its time. The elite lived in luxurious villas, wearing finely crafted togas, while the lower classes struggled daily to make a living. In this context, Hispania, today's Iberian Peninsula, was a strategic territory for Rome. Gades, now known as Cadiz, was under Roman control but still retained unique cultural nuances due to the influences of earlier peoples. Amid temples, stone houses and bustling markets, merchants from various parts of the Mediterranean passed through. The city displayed a certain cosmopolitan glow that fascinated Caesar. Julius Caesar, then about 31 years old, had been appointed quaestor and, therefore, was headed to Hispania to perform his duties, wearing a simple woolen toga, but already showing a taste for accessories that highlighted his status. His eyes held a glimpse of uncontrollable ambition. He felt that his destiny was great, even though he still did not know how or when that potential would be realized. The young Roman longed for heroic deeds. He had grown up hearing stories of warriors and generals who had conquered distant lands. However, he had not yet achieved the brilliance of those immortal names. And it was in this spirit of expectation that Caesar approached a temple dedicated to Hercules, unaware that inside, a statue capable of stirring every fiber of his soul awaited him. Want to know who was the man who, even as a sculpture, made Julius Caesar cry? Next, we delve into the origins of Alexander and the power he wielded not only in life, but also in his legacy. The figure of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great became king of Macedonia at the age of 20. His fair skin and wavy blonde hair became icons in the artistic representations of his time. Physically athletic, he was known not only for his strength, but especially for his sharp, strategic mind. In statues, he was typically depicted wearing Macedonian military gear, a reinforced breastplate, an ornate helmet, and a royal cloak draped over his shoulders, a symbol of nobility and sovereignty. By the age of 32, Alexander had conquered territories that included Persia, Egypt, and parts of India, an unheard-of feat until then. His fame was due to his boldness in battle and an expansionist vision with no limits. Legend has it that he never lost a single major battle, so effective was his army and the confidence Alexander placed in his commanders. The fascination with his figure transcended borders. Even centuries later, Roman generals and leaders admired Alexander's drive and glory. Many dreamed of following in his footsteps. Pompey, for example, adopted the title Magnus, the Great, in clear reference to Alexander. And of course, Julius Caesar was not far behind in terms of inspiration and ambition. Alexander's cultural impact was evident in monuments spread throughout the Mediterranean. In Gades specifically, the Temple of Hercules housed a statue of the conqueror, an artistic representation that inspired both devotion and awe. At this point, the destinies of two giants of history, Alexander and Caesar, would cross, albeit only through a sculpture. How can a simple statue shake the heart of a man destined for glory so deeply? Get ready to discover how this pivotal moment propelled the young Caesar to change the course of history. The fateful encounter at the Temple of Hercules. Crossing a courtyard of polished stones, Julius Caesar encountered the monumental entrance of the temple dedicated to Hercules. Outside, torches illuminated sculptures and inscriptions that revered the demigod. Inside, the air was dense, laden with the scent of incense and the prayers of the devotees. Upon entering the sanctuary, Caesar spotted the statue of Alexander. Carved from white marble with incredibly realistic details, it stood imposing on a pedestal. The glow from oil lanterns shone upon the serene yet determined face of the Macedonian king. Alexander seemed to gaze through time, challenging anyone who dared to cross his path. In silence, Caesar walked toward the statue, feeling the weight of every step. When he finally stood face to face with Alexander, a whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed him. There he was, at the same age Alexander had, when he conquered the known world. But Caesar, in his own eyes, had not yet done anything worthy of such renown. The contrast between the legendary conqueror and the ambitious young Roman was overwhelming. According to some historical accounts, Caesar even wept before the statue, lamenting the lost time and vowing to himself that he would surpass or at least match Alexander's legacy. That moment was the catalyst that spurred him to embark on ever more daring ventures, in pursuit of greatness at any cost. If a simple moment of emotion can change a person's life, imagine what it can do to the destiny of an entire empire. Now, let's see how Julius Caesar's lament turned into fuel for an unprecedented rise to power. From lament to action, Caesar's awakening. As he left the temple, Caesar's face still bore the mark of a personal epiphany. The feeling of inadequacy transformed into determination. He didn't want to be just another illustrious man in Rome. He wanted to be Rome's man. At that moment, the comparison with Alexander served as a mirror reflecting both his dreams and his reality. Thus, Caesar dove headfirst into the Roman political scene. He returned to the capital, determined to forge alliances that would elevate him to the pinnacle of power. And it was during this process that the idea of aligning with powerful figures emerged. The first triumvirate was born, composed of Julius, Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. Under this alliance, the young leader had the opportunity to prove his worth. By investing in military campaigns, especially in Gaul, he conquered territories and gradually earned the respect of the troops and the fear of the conservative senators. He desired not only glory, but also lasting influence. With every victory, Caesar felt closer to reaching the benchmark set by Alexander. However, this obsession demanded constant sacrifices, politics, battles, agreements. Everything became part of his strategy for ascension. There was no longer room for hesitation. Every decision was calculated to bring him closer to legendary status. Do you want to know how Caesar's battles shaped the course of Rome and placed him side by side with history's greatest conquerors? get ready to explore the wars that paved his way to the top. Consolidation of power, wars and triumphs. Shortly after establishing the first triumvirate, Caesar assumed command in Gaul. This region was inhabited by Celtic tribes, often regarded as barbarians by the Romans. Throughout his campaigns, Caesar demonstrated military genius, employing innovative tactics. He used mobile bridges to cross rivers and launched surprise attacks, undermining the enemy's resistance. With each victory, another step was taken towards what Caesar so desired: fame, recognition, and power. The Roman Senate grew uneasy with his burgeoning prestige. While senators feared losing control over the Republic, Caesar saw this as confirmation of his own talent. In terms of attire, Caesar evolved from a young man wearing simple togas to a general donning leather armor, decorated helmets, and custom shields, symbols of his rising status in the military world. The glory he won on the battlefields made his name increasingly respected among both the troops and the people. By the way, have you ever wondered how these events shaped the destiny of an empire? If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button now so we can keep bringing you such impactful accounts and share with friends who are passionate about history. But what happens when two great men crave the same spotlight? Now let's see how the rivalry with Pompey pushed Caesar into irreversible, extreme decisions. The conflict with Pompey and the irreversible path. As Julius Caesar's fame grew, jealousy and suspicion took hold of Pompey. Once an ally and also known as the Great, Pompey began to see Caesar's rising popularity as a direct threat to his own prestige. The death of Crassus, the third member of the triumvirate, intensified the tension. With this balance lost, two powerful men remained, vying for supremacy in Rome. Several senators backed Pompey, fearing that Caesar might subvert the Republic and become a tyrant. It was in this context that Caesar crossed the Rubicon, a river, marking the boundary between Cisalpine Gaul and the Italian peninsula. The act was considered treason. Roman armies were forbidden from crossing that line, but Caesar, determined not to turn back, chose to risk everything. Alea iacta est. The die is cast, he declared. Crossing the Rubicon was, in practice, the beginning of a civil war. Pompey retreated to the east, believing he could gather forces and defeat Caesar from afar. However, what unfolded was an escalation of Caesar's influence as he gained more and more popular support. How did Caesar's quest for power lead him to another encounter that would mark history? Up next, we'll discuss his arrival in Egypt and his involvement with the iconic Cleopatra. Caesar's journey in Egypt and the encounter with Cleopatra. After decisively defeating Pompey in crucial battles, Caesar headed to Egypt. Pompey, in his flight, sought refuge in the Ptolemaic kingdom, but was ultimately killed upon arrival. At that time, Cleopatra was contending for the throne with her brother Ptolemy XIII. Seeing in Caesar an opportunity to secure her power, she won him over with intelligence and seduction. Cleopatra was a woman with light brown skin, dressed in exquisite linen garments adorned with lavish jewelry that underscored her royal status. She carried herself with a proud bearing, had an intense expression, and spoke several languages. The combination of beauty and political cunning immediately caught Caesar's attention upon their meeting. Their relationship was not just romantic, it was also strategic. Caesar understood the value of an alliance with the powerful Queen of Egypt. With her support, he helped Cleopatra consolidate the throne, and in return, he obtained resources and connections that further strengthened his position on the international stage. During this period, Caesar had the opportunity to visit Alexander's tomb in Alexandria. His idol lay there, interred in the city that bore his name. For Caesar, it was like completing a cycle, revisiting the myth that had inspired him since Gades. But now he was no longer the young man who once felt envious. In a way, he had become equal to the great Macedonian. The return to Rome and the final ascension. After so many conquests, how would Caesar return to the capital of the ancient world? And how would the Republic react to a man who was on the verge of becoming a king? Let's find out now. Victorious. In Egypt, and having resolved conflicts in other territories, Caesar returned to Rome triumphant. He held grand victory parades, known as triumphs, in which he showcased war prisoners, looted treasures, and evidence of his glorious campaigns. The people cheered with enthusiasm, but the Senate remained divided between admiration and fear. At that moment, Caesar's stature reached an almost divine level. He was recognized as Dictator Perpetuo, a title that broke with the Republican tradition of temporary mandates. His attire, now consisting of a purple toga and golden ornaments, evoked royalty. Many openly compared him to Alexander, saying that he had replicated the feat of conquering territories and shaping the Roman world with the same intensity that Alexander had molded the Greek and Persian worlds. For Caesar, this was the fulfillment of a youthful dream, a dream born in front of the statue in Gades. However, this elevation to absolute power triggered jealousy and conspiracies. While some believed in the need for a strong ruler, others feared the loss of republican liberties. Amid whispers and secret meetings, a tragic end was being plotted that would put an end to the rule of the man who considered himself the spiritual successor of Alexander. What happens when the absolute power of a single man challenges the very foundations of a secular republic? We now approach the conspiracy that would change Rome forever. The fatal conspiracy and the blood legacy. The conspiracy against Caesar involved renowned senators, including Brutus and Cassius, who had once been close to him. Claiming that Caesar planned to establish a monarchy and destroy the Republic, this group devised his assassination. On the fateful day of March 15th, 44 BC, the infamous Ides of March, Caesar was surrounded in the Senate. Wearing his distinctive toga, he was stabbed multiple times and fell at the foot of Pompey's statue. His last words, though controversial, symbolized the pain of betrayal. With his death, the Republic was not restored. On the contrary, it plunged into further conflicts, paving the way for the rise of Octavian, who would become Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. In other words, Caesar's legacy was greater than his own life and echoed through the centuries. Ironically, just like Alexander, Julius Caesar met an early and violent end. If, in the beginning, he wept upon seeing the Macedonian statue for having accomplished nothing extraordinary, in the end, he left one of the greatest legacies in history. His name, just like Alexander's, became synonymous with greatness and power. The time has come to understand the crucial point of our story. Why did that encounter at the Temple of Hercules so many years ago trigger everything we have seen until now? How Alexander's statue marked the destiny of Rome. Alexander's statue was not merely a symbol of past conquests, it served as a mirror for Caesar, revealing the extent of his potential. It was an invitation to dream big and a stern demand that he fulfill his destiny. Without that experience, perhaps Caesar would not have redoubled his efforts in military campaigns, nor risked so much in politics. The desire to be compared to the greatest conqueror known in antiquity ignited his mind and molded his way of acting. For Rome, this meant decades of profound transformations as the city-state moved definitively toward becoming an empire. For the world, it signified the emergence of a legacy that would influence the history of Western civilization, from laws and policies to linguistic and cultural matters. Alexander and Caesar, in different eras, forged similar paths. Both were ambitious young men who changed the course of history. One lived long enough to build an immense empire, the other to radically transform the greatest republic in the world into something even greater. In the end, the statue represented not only Alexander, but also all the weight and inspiration that future generations could find by admiring their deeds. And thus we reach the end of this journey, which took us from the restless youth of Julius Caesar to his tragic end on the Ides of March, always guided by the shadow and example of Alexander the Great. We witnessed how a simple encounter between a man and a statue catalyzed the ambition of one of the greatest leaders Rome ever saw. If you enjoyed this time-traveling adventure and want more fascinating stories, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this video with your friends. Your participation is essential for us to continue bringing new perspectives on the ancient world. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in our next video about ancient Rome and its unforgettable characters.